start this off by making our cheese sauce. So I'm adding 4 cups of water into a pot. Then we're going to add 1.5 cups of potatoes that I just kind of chopped up. It was 1 potato. This is what it came out to. Half a cup of raw cashews. And if you want to save some money, buy the cashew pieces instead of whole cashews. And then 1 carrot chopped up for color. We're going to let this boil for like 20 minutes. While that's boiling, let's work on our ground beef filling, our vegan ground beef filling. So I'm going to add some oil into a pan, and then I'm adding a little bit of onion. We're going to let that cook for a few minutes until the onions are nice and translucent, fragrant. This is going to help give the vegan ground beef crumbles more flavor. Then we're going to add in a whole pack of these beefless ground beef crumbles. It's such a tongue twister to say that. These are the ones from Trader Joe's. I love these. They're like $2.99. They're really good. They're actually my favorite ones. So I'm just going to use a spatula, break them up a little bit, and kind of get them cooking a little. You don't have to cook them for too long, only a few minutes. And then I'm going to add the taco seasoning mix, also from Trader Joe's, because I love that one. It's delicious, and you have to just check. Some of them have milk in them, so make sure to check. The one from Trader Joe's is definitely vegan. So I added in, I don't know, like a tablespoon, and I just let that cook. So once everything was all soft and done boiling, we can add that into a blender, high-speed blender. I'm also going to add in a little bit of vegan cheddar cheese shreds. This is optional, but I like to do it. We're going to add in some non-dairy milk. I'm using unsweetened original almond milk. Make sure it's unsweetened and no flavors. Otherwise, you'll end up with vanilla tasting cheese. We're gonna have some salt in there because cheese is salty, and nutritional yeast, and you're just going to blend this up. You may need to add more almond milk. I usually start with about half a cup, and then I add more as I go. And you don't have to use almond milk. You can use any non-dairy milk you like. Let it go until it's nice and smooth. It should look something like this. It's really thick and cheesy and delicious. And I love this cheese sauce. It's like my favorite one to make. So now we're gonna form our crunch wrap. So I used a little street taco as my like kind of sealant at the end. You'll see it. So we're gonna spoon on some of the beefless ground beef crumbles into a little circle. Then we're gonna pour on some of this cheese sauce. Oh, look at that, so good, so thick, delicious. Okay, then we're gonna add tortilla chips. I saw some recipes said to add tostadas. I couldn't find tostadas. The tortilla chips work fine. Then we're gonna spoon on some vegan sour cream and kind of spread that out on top. It's kind of nice because it kind of like seals the tortilla chips together. So I really like that. Not a lot, maybe like a tablespoon. Then we're gonna add some lettuce and tomato, and then a little bit more of our vegan cheese sauce. And then we are going to put that street taco on top of all of that. So now as we fold it over, that's what's gonna make the whole thing sealed up and look like the one from Taco Bell. So I just kind of folded it and made little pleats and folded the edges up. There was no really right or wrong way to do this. Some of them came out prettier than others, but you're just kind of folding and taking the sides up, and you're gonna end up with kind of like a hexagon or an octagon, or it just kind of depends. So once you're done folding it up, you actually wanna flip it over. It's gonna actually stay more secure that way, and then we're gonna put it face side down into a pan in a few minutes. So just flip it over, and then it's actually more secure and easier to hold. So I'm just gonna show you how to make another one just in case you need to watch anything over again. All in all though, these were actually very easy to make, way easier than I thought they would be, and they came out really delicious. So I'm just folding this one up again, and as you can see, this one came out not as pretty as the first one, and that's totally fine. Who really cares? Okay, so then we're gonna go over to our pan. I'm adding a little bit of oil in there, and we're going to just I like to take a silicone brush and kind of spread it around so it's evenly distributed in the bottom of the pan. We're going to take the crunch wrap face side down and put it in there and let it cook for like 3-ish minutes on a medium heat, just so it gets nice and sealed and crispy on the one side. And you can see like the little bubbles forming. It's kind of like frying the tortilla. And then you can also press down a little bit with a spatula if you like. And I'm just going to flip it over. Then you can cook the other side for a few minutes as well until it's nice and golden and crispy. And that's it. These are them. They're all done. I got 4 of them from this recipe. And now let's cut it in half because that's the best moment of all. Cutting it in half, and it's going to look something like this. And you have all these beautiful layers and cheesiness and sauciness, and just looks so good. So they looked actually really pretty, kind of like all together when they were done before I cut into the rest of them. And then these are them all stacked up. So good. You'll have extra leftover queso as well, so you are welcome for that. And yeah, these are just delicious. You guys are gonna love them. I just know it. gonna start this off by cooking our lentils. So I'm adding 2 cups of water and about 1/3 of a cup of brown lentils into a pot. We're gonna cook this until all of the water has been absorbed, about 25 minutes. You want these lentils to be really dry so that way they form a nice patty later on. So just let them come to a boil. They're gonna take a little while to cook. Lentils do take a little bit of time to cook, and you can make these ahead of time if you want. And then once they look something like this, they are good to go. Into a blender, we're gonna add some rolled oats, and we're just going to blend this up almost before it reaches oat flour, just so it has a little bit of texture to it still, something along the lines of this. So it's like half oat flour, half has a little bit of texture. This is gonna help with the patty later on. So to make our patty, we're going to add the cooked lentils into a bowl, and then using a potato masher, I just mash them up. You can also use the back of a fork, or if you really want, you can pop it into a food processor or blender. And I just like doing it by hand though, so I don't over mash them, because we're not mashing them completely. We do want them to still have a little bit of texture similar to the oats. So once it looks something like this, that's what we are going for. Then we're gonna add in some soy sauce, or you can use tamari if you are gluten-free and soy-free. And then we're gonna add in a bunch of seasonings. The seasonings really help to give this a really good flavor. And then finally, our oats. And you're just going to mix this all up until it reaches a really nice consistency that can hold its shape. If you're finding it's really too dry for some reason, you can add a dot of water in, but I've tested these twice and I didn't need it. So then I'm taking about 1/3 cup measuring cup, and I'm just going to pack in the patty mixture and then flatten it out. We want to make this nice and thin, and then we are placing it on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. You're gonna get 4 patties from this recipe, so you're only gonna need 2, and then you can save the other 2 for something else. Bake for 18 minutes and flip halfway through. Then we are going to make our pancakes. So we're taking a cup of non-dairy milk and adding some apple cider vinegar in there. This is how we're going to make a vegan buttermilk, super easy, or you can use lemon juice. Then I'm going to add in some all-purpose flour into a bowl. If you're gluten-free, you can swap the flour or use whatever kind of flour you like. We're gonna add some baking powder, sugar, and salt. And whisk this all together to make sure there's no clumps and the batter is smooth. And then we can add in that buttermilk once it's curdled a little bit. And this is just gonna make the pancakes so light and fluffy. I like to add the batter into a measuring cup. It's easier for pouring. To make our egg, we're gonna take chickpea flour and some seasonings. It's just very simple to make this. I'm gonna whisk the chickpea flour a little bit, add in some nutritional yeast and turmeric, mostly for color and a little bit of taste, and some black pepper, and just whisk that up. Oh, and I'm gonna add my water in too, of course, and just whisk that on up. This is gonna be a little bit runnier so we can achieve that more folded egg, softer look. This is a foil ring. I made this homemade. You can buy circle molds online. I'll link a video down below on how to make this. It's actually very easy, and you're gonna use this to make your pancakes. You want to grease this up extremely well because otherwise the pancakes will stick, and we don't want that. So give it a good spray. We're gonna add in about 1/4 cup of our pancake batter and let that cook and bubble up like normal. Then we're gonna add in our maple syrup. If you wanna be really fancy, you can turn the maple syrup into hard candy. I did not feel like doing that. This way worked really nice too. And then we're gonna add another 1/4 cup of batter on there and let that cook up. You have to kind of let this cook in stages so that way there's actually cooking occurring and there's kind of like layering happening. So give like about 3 to 5 minutes in between each stage. You can also put a lid on it to help it cook quicker and help the top to cook up a little bit. Once you see the sides have kind of pulled away, you can remove the ring, and be careful, it will be hot, and give the pancake a nice flip. If you make a little mess like I did, don't worry, you can just use your spatula to clean it up and get it into a better looking circle. But as you can see, this is a nice, really fluffy pancake, and you want to do this on a low, medium heat so nothing burns. While you're making your pancakes, you can work on your chickpea flour egg. So I just add a little bit of spray in there, added half the batter because we're gonna make 2 sandwiches with this, and you're gonna cook this on a super low heat. Once it looks slightly dry on top like this, and you can kind of lift the sides up, you can give it a flip. Don't worry if it breaks in the process like this, it's really not that big of a deal. Just cook that for another few minutes until it's nice and kind of cooked through and not really wet anymore. To fold the egg, if you feel like doing this, you can just kind of flip the two sides in and then flip the other two sides in. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it is like soft and has an eggy feel and taste, and I do really like it. If you don't feel like doing this, you can of course just make like little chickpea flour patties. This is also optional, but if you want the sausage to have a little bit more fattiness and richness to it, you can heat it up in the pan in some olive oil, just because it doesn't have any fat, and real sausage is obviously like all fat, optional. And then finally we can assemble. So take one pancake and add a slice of vegan cheddar or American. I like to put a lid with a touch of water and just let that kind of steam up so the cheese melts. Then we're gonna add that sausage patty. Then we're gonna add our folded egg, and then we are going to add the other pancake. And we are finally ready to eat this, guys, because this sucker was so damn good. Just look at this. Look at how beautiful that is. Look at how delicious that is. So good. Fluffy pancakes. You get sweet, salty, savory, everything. And it's really good. Like, it actually came out really good. I was so impressed with it. So I think you guys will really like it. And of course, if you want to just use just egg or like a store-bought sausage patty, like do something easier along the way, be my guest. But I just wanted to show you guys how to make this basically completely homemade, aside from the slice of vegan cheese. So you will need one package of super firm or high protein tofu. This is the most dense tofu. It has the least amount of water in it. Now, normally the perk is you don't need to press it, but I did decide to press it for this recipe because I wanted to get out as much water as possible. This is also upside down, by the way. This was my first time actually ever using a tofu press, and I did really like it. I will continue to use it in the future, and my sister got me this as a present for Christmas, so I'll have it linked down below because it worked really well. But we want to get out any of that extra water, really just to like compress the tofu even more, and it'll help just make it denser. So then we're going to flip the tofu block on its side, and we're going to cut 4 thinner rectangles of the tofu out. So they'll be about a 1/4 inch thick, but you're just going to cut 4 of them. So you have the tofu rectangle that is the same size as the original block, but just thinner. And then once you cut them all, you're going to cut those rectangles in half. So we're going to make 8 tenders from this. Now, this next step is optional and you don't have to do it, but it was more for aesthetic, where I cut the corners of those rectangles off to give it more of a tender like shape. And again, you don't do this if you don't care about what it looks like. Save those little corners. I use them in a stir fry, or you can make like tofu ricotta with them or something. So don't throw them out. They are useful, and it's quite a bit of tofu, but again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. If you don't care, it's not a big deal. So now let's make our marinades. So we're going to take garlic powder, onion powder, and poultry seasoning and add that into a nice large bowl. You're going to take pickle juice, so just the juice from, a jar of pickles, and some non-dairy milk. As always, make sure it is unsweetened, unflavored, so you don't end up with a vanilla tasting marinade. Mix this all together, and then you're going to add in your tofu tenders. You want to marinate this for at least 20 minutes, or up to 3 hours, 4 hours overnight. Like, the longer you marinate it, the more flavor it's going to have. And just make sure to kind of like move them around once in a while they're marinating, so that way everyone's getting a chance to hang out and be submerged, and just give them all a shot in there. And if you're going to marinate it for longer than 20 minutes, make sure to put it in the fridge. So now let's make our breading. We're going to combine all-purpose flour with paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, black pepper, and salt. Add in some cornstarch. This will help to make it extra crispy and just adds more texture to it. And you're just going to mix this up. I like to do this kind of in like a flat bowl, if you will. Makes it better for breading. You're going to take the tofu out of the marinade, dip it into that breading, and just kind of pack it on. And then we're going to double dip. So you're going to go back into the marinade, and then we'll just coat it from there, and then we're going to go back into the flour. And don't worry if this gets messy, because when the marinade starts to drip into the flour, it actually like promotes those kind of crummy pieces that we're looking for. So we can get a little messy here. And now you're just going to repeat until all of them are made. And this is a little bit of a tedious process, but because we're only making 8 of them, it does go by pretty quickly. So don't worry, it should, it won't take too long. And I really like the double breading just because it really adds that extra coat and crispiness. Now we're going to generously spray these with like a spray oil, and then we're going to air fry them. I have alternative directions for possibly trying baking and deep frying on the blog. You're going to spray them again, really coat them well with the spray oil, and you're going to air fry them. While they're air frying, let's make our buffalo vegan mayo. So you're going to just combine buffalo sauce and vegan mayo and mix it up. And this is such a delicious dipping sauce. It's really easy to make. I love buffalo sauce with everything, so easy peasy done. And our tenders are going to look like this when they're done. You can add some black pepper, coarse sea salt, and green onion on top for garnish. They may have some white spots from the flour when air frying. They are completely cooked, so you can just give another little spray of the oil right on top, so it'll just kind of take away that dryness. That's really what it is. It's just from being cooked and being dried out, basically. And yeah, these are them. How beautiful do they look? They are golden, they are crispy, they are perfectly textured, and they are just delicious. So to start this off, we're doing it the same way that we did the crunch wrap. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil into our pan, heat that up, add a little bit of chopped onion in there, and just let that cook for a few minutes till it gets nice and fragrant and a little translucent. This is just going to give our vegan ground beef a lot of nice flavor. Don't let it burn, just till it gets translucent. So I'm using the Light Life Smart Crumbles, the Smart Ground, the Mexican crumbles. They didn't have too much of a Mexican flavor, if I'm being quite honest, but I happen to like these ones a lot. And I am just going to put them into my pan and break them up. This was about probably 7 ounces of the ground crumbles, 8 ounces. It wasn't the whole thing. And I'm just taking my spatula, breaking up the pieces and letting it heat up so we can just get them all broken down. Then I'm gonna add in my taco seasoning. I'm using the same one I used as the Crunchwrap video from Trader Joe's. This is my favorite one, and just be sure to check your taco seasonings. Make sure they're vegan friendly. So just mix that up and that's good to go. Let's make our cheese kind of sauce. So we're gonna add the Daya, cheddar, and pepper jack cutting board shreds and a little bit of non-dairy milk, and we're just gonna let this melt. The gordita has like a kind of a quesadilla on the outside, so I figured my best bet would be to melt the vegan cheese down and get it nice and gooey, so that way it was nice and melted, just like how it is from Taco Bell, because vegan cheese doesn't always melt the best if you were just to put that in the microwave. There's also a spicy ranch dressing, so I'm just taking a vegan ranch, I'm using the one from Daya, and adding some cayenne pepper, and I'm just gonna mix that up. I'm not sure if this is really how they do it or how exactly they do it at Taco Bell, but I mean, it was spicy ranch, you know? I had a little more cayenne just because, you know, I like my things a little extra spicy. Just do it to your spiciness level. So now you're gonna have to cut out a little tortilla. So I took a medium-sized tortilla, put the 2 crunchy shells, and then cut around, and that's the size that it needs to be to wrap around the crunchy tortilla shell. So I just cut a few of those up, already done. I just want to show you guys how to do that. And then you're just gonna fill your crunchy taco with the meat. I actually got the ones that stand on their own, and they're so much easier to use than the ones that don't. So highly suggest using those instead. Then we're gonna drizzle on our spicy ranch dressing. Then we're gonna add a little bit of lettuce. Then you're gonna put this to the side for a second, and we are going to take the soft tortilla and we're gonna spread some of this cheese sauce on here. So that's why I found it better to just melt this ahead of time instead of melting it onto the tortilla. I just felt like it made a nicer, smoother sauce. Then you're gonna put that hard taco right in the middle of there, fold the sides up so it's kind of like wrapped around and tucked in there. And then you're just going to put a little bit of shredded vegan cheese on top, and that's it. That's exactly how you make these. They're so much easier actually than the crunch wraps to make, and they're really, really good. And it kind of has that same thing going on of the mixing of textures of like soft and crunchy and like spicy and not spicy, and it just is really good. I really like these. So you can also add a little extra cheese if you feel like you didn't get enough in there, just to like squeeze it and make sure it's really cheesy. Look at all that cheesy goodness. Now that they're all done, I lined them up, and I'm going to put some green onion on here and hot sauce. I know that's not really typical of a one that you would get at Taco Bell, but I want to make mine a little bit nicer, a little fancier, you know, a little more chef-like. But you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I did like the flavors it added. And these are them. They're all done. They are delicious. You'll get 5 from this recipe, and I think you guys are really going to like these. They're really, really good. I know you guys enjoyed the crunch wrap, so I figured let's veganize another Taco Bell recipe. We're gonna start this off by making our special sauce. So vegan mayo is the first ingredient of this. I'm using the one from Sir Kensington's. Grade A maple syrup from Trader Joe's. Ketchup, dill relish, and apple cider vinegar are going in next. And finally, some onion powder and salt. And we're gonna mix this very, very weird concoction up together to make our sauce. I have to say, I'm not a big fan of ketchup or mayo, but something about the two of them together works out pretty well. And I'm just gonna refrigerate this until we're ready to use it. I'm gonna get my veggies ready, so I'm chopping up a little bit of onion. I chopped up a little too much. Don't do as much as I did. Just do like 1/8 of an onion because you don't really need that much. And we're gonna chop it up into little tiny pieces. I don't really know why McDonald's went with raw onion instead of cooking them a little bit, but whatever. And then I just couldn't find any little sliced pickles, so I just used some whole dill pickles and cut it into little pieces. I think McDonald's uses sour dill pickles if you want a more authentic feel. And then I just shredded up some iceberg lettuce. Super easy toppings. All right, so I'm taking one Beyond patty and I'm going to cut it in half. The Big Mac patties are actually pretty thin. I didn't realize that until I was looking at pictures of them. So I cut it in half, kind of poorly, and then I'm just going to take my fork and mush it together into a bigger, more uniform patty. And I'm measuring it against the buns just to make sure they're around the same size. And I actually love doing this with the Beyond Burgers because I think they just cook a little bit better and crispier. And I was never a big fan of like hunky meat before going vegan. And then I'm gonna season it with a little bit of garlic powder, black pepper, and salt. So yeah, I love making these thinner patties like this. Just comes out better. And then obviously what we do to one patty, we do to the other. And I did the same thing. Then we're gonna bring it over to a pan, nice nonstick pan. I'm putting the patties seasoning side down so I can season the other side. And then we're just gonna let them cook. The Beyond meat has a lot of oil in there, so I do not add any extra oil to this. As you can see, that's gonna all start bubbling in about 2 seconds. And like I said, it really doesn't need any extra oil. This is like a lot of oil in the Beyond meat patty. And after about 3 to 4 minutes, we're gonna give it a flip and they're nice and golden brown. See, I just think they cook so much better when they're thinner actually. And just cook it for another few minutes till it gets brown on that side. Okay, I'm going to remove one patty from the pan and I'm going to put my vegan cheddar cheese. McDonald's uses American cheese. You can use vegan American or vegan cheddar, it's fine. I'm using the one from Whole Foods, really love this. And my buns so we can get them nice and toasty. So now let's assemble this burger. I'm gonna take one bun. We're gonna take some special sauce and we're gonna put it on there. You can do as much or as little as you like. Then we're gonna add on some of that shredded lettuce. Next up, the cheese. So when I was looking at the picture, I realized the cheese goes underneath the burger, which doesn't really make any sense, but I was trying to keep it authentic. Then we're taking one Beyond Meat patty. Then we're gonna take some of our raw chopped onion. I guess McDonald's did it so it would streamline the process of using raw onion rather than a cooked onion, but I don't know. I feel like I would want it cooked. Then you have to take another bottom bun. I actually realized mine was too big and cut it in half to make it thinner. Then we added more special sauce, more lettuce. Here come our pickles. Now we can add that other patty, more onions, and then finally the top burger bun. I used some food photography magic, toothpicks, skewers to help me out to make this look a little more mushed down and better. But this is it. This is our vegan Big Mac. Oh my gosh, it was so good. Look at this baby. Oh yes. So for this recipe, I'm going to use the Gardein lightly seasoned chicken scallopini. I'm just preparing it according to package directions, so I'm just going to put a little spray oil in there, cook it for 1 side per minute, and then you add in about 3 tablespoons of water for 2 pieces, and then you cover it and you just let it cook. I toyed around with the idea of using soy curls, of using a breaded chicken, like a vegan breaded chicken patty. I go into it in the blog post if you are curious, and there's so many ways you could do it, but I ultimately figured I just wanted to use this Gardein chicken scallopini for this because I like it. So once they're all cooked up like this, we're just going to pop them on a plate and we're going to let them rest for a minute or two, and then we're going to cut them up into little bite-sized pieces. So I just first cut it into strips and then I cut it into like little squares from there. I don't know. I toyed around again with the idea of like doing a shredded chicken, but I don't know. I liked the little pieces in there instead. So that's what I went with. Because they're little, you don't need actually that much of each ingredient because you don't want to overstuff the crunch wraps, which I'll talk about more later. But yeah, so the 2 was more than enough. So this is this, and then let's prepare our other ingredients. So first I'm gonna cut up some little cherry tomatoes, and or I guess these are grape tomatoes, sorry. And I'm just going to cut them up into thirds. My knife was sharp. Okay, these tomatoes were a little bit old, but they're fine. They're good enough. They're going in a wrap. They don't need to be the most amazing tomatoes. So I'm just gonna pop those into a little dish, I couldn't think of the word for a second, sorry, and put them to the side. And then we're gonna cut up some green onion, so cutting off the bottoms, cutting off the tops, and then we will just slice it. And I like to prepare everything and then keep it separate, so that way it's like easy to assemble it, kind of like when I make spring rolls. Like I like to keep everything separate, so then that way as I'm making these wraps, it's just easier to grab the ingredients. So green onions chopped up. Then we're gonna cut up a little bit of lettuce. You can just do like, I really didn't do that much because again, you don't need very much of each ingredient. So I'm just going to finely shred that. This is my vegan cheese. I'm using the So Delicious Mexican style shreds. Then you need little street tacos, okay, like these. Then you need a medium-sized taco. I'm using these plant-powered ones. And then you need some sort of a